I never thought I'd be the type of father to make enemies at a charity gala. But then again, I never thought anyone would have the audacity to insult my son the way Victoria Pemberton did. My son Marcus called me on a Tuesday evening in September, and I could hear something different in his voice. Not the usual check-in tone, but genuine excitement. The kind I hadn't heard since he was 12 and won his first debate tournament. "Dad, I need to tell you something," he said. I met someone. Marcus had always been careful about his personal life. At 34, he dated, sure, but never with this kind of energy in his voice. He told me about Jennifer Chen, a physiotherapist he'd met at a community health fair. They'd been dating for 8 months, taking it slow, making sure it was real, and now he wanted me to meet her. "She's brilliant, Dad, genuinely kind, works with kids who have developmental delays, and she laughs at my terrible jokes." I smiled. My late wife, Sarah, would have loved that detail. She always said Marcus needed someone who could appreciate his particular brand of humor. We arranged dinner for the following Saturday at a modest Italian place Marcus loved. No pretense, no pressure, just family getting to know each other. Jennifer arrived right on time, carrying a small box of butter tarts. "Marcus mentioned they're your favorite, Mr. Morrison," she said, her handshake firm and warm. She was exactly as Marcus had described. Thoughtful, engaged, asking questions about my work as a civil engineer, without the glazed-over look people usually get when I talk about infrastructure projects. When she talked about her patients, you could see the genuine care in her eyes. Not the performative kind you see at fundraisers, but real compassion. "I had a 7-year-old today who took his first independent steps," she said. 18 months of work, and his face when he realized he was doing it. She paused, collecting herself. "Sorry, I get emotional about the wins." "Never apologize for caring," I told her. Marcus reached for her hand across the table, and I saw it. The same way I used to look at Sarah. The way you look at someone when you've found your person. 2 months later, Marcus called again. "We're engaged, Dad. I wanted you to be the first to know." I was thrilled, genuinely, completely thrilled. We planned a small engagement party at my place. Nothing fancy. Marcus's colleagues, Jennifer's family, close friends, maybe 40 people total. That's when Victoria Pemberton entered the picture. She was the mother of Ethan Pemberton, one of Marcus's colleagues at the law firm. They'd gone to the same university, moved in similar professional circles. I'd met Victoria exactly once before, at a firm function, where she'd spent 20 minutes explaining why her country club was superior to all others in Toronto. She arrived at the engagement party in what I can only describe as aggressive elegance, the kind of outfit that costs more than most people's monthly rent and wants you to know it. "Marcus, darling," she air-kissed near his cheeks, "and this must be the bride-to-be." Jennifer extended her hand warmly. "Mrs. Pemberton, it's lovely to meet you properly." Victoria's handshake was brief, dismissive. Her eyes swept over Jennifer's dress, a simple but elegant navy number, with the kind of assessment that felt surgical. "Charming," she said, in a tone that meant anything but. I watched the interaction, feeling the first stirrings of unease. My late wife had taught me to trust my instincts about people, and every instinct was raising red flags. The party progressed pleasantly enough. Jennifer's parents, David and Lynn Chen, were warm and gracious. Her father owned a small printing business in Scarborough, and her mother taught piano lessons. Good people, the kind who built their lives through honest work and raised a daughter who gave her time to helping children walk again. Around 8 o'clock, Marcus called for everyone's attention. He wanted to make a toast. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "Jennifer and I are incredibly grateful to have so many people we love in one room." People raised their glasses, smiling. "I know Dad wanted to say a few words," Marcus continued, gesturing to me. I hadn't prepared anything formal, but I stood. When my wife Sarah passed away 8 years ago, I worried that Marcus might never let himself be vulnerable enough to find what we had. But seeing him with Jennifer, I know he's found even better. Someone who matches his heart and challenges his mind. "Welcome to our family, Jennifer." The room applauded. Jennifer's eyes glistened. Then Victoria Pemberton stood. "Oh, how sweet," she said, her voice carrying that particular pitch of condescension that wealthy people mistake for charm. "I suppose I should add my congratulations as well." Something in her tone made the room quiet. "Jennifer, dear." Victoria continued, her smile sharp as cut glass. I do want to welcome you to our world. It's different from what you're used to, I'm sure. Marcus comes from a certain social standing. There are expectations. Marcus's face went pale. Victoria, I don't think... She waved him off. No, no, let me finish. It's important she understands. Victoria turned back to Jennifer, who stood frozen, smile fixed in place. The legal profession, the circles we move in, they require a certain polish. You'll need to learn about wine beyond what you drink at dinner, about art, not just what you find pretty, about how to navigate society events without embarrassing yourself or, more importantly, your husband. The room had gone completely silent. There's still work to be done, dear, Victoria said, her tone dripping with false kindness. But bless your heart, you're trying. And that's what matters, isn't it? That you're willing to learn your place. My hands clenched at my sides. I felt heat rising in my chest, the kind of anger that makes your vision narrow. Jennifer's face had gone carefully blank, the way people's do when they're trying not to cry in public. David Chen stepped closer to his daughter, his jaw tight. Marcus found his voice. Victoria, that's completely inappropriate. You need to... Oh, Marcus, don't be dramatic. Victoria interrupted. I'm simply being honest. Better she hears it now from someone who wants to help than whispered about later. She turned to address the room. We all know how these things work. Background matters. Breeding matters. And while Jennifer is a lovely girl, we must be realistic about the adjustments she'll need to make. I saw Jennifer's mother put her arm around her daughter. I saw Marcus's hands shaking with rage and humiliation. I saw Victoria Pemberton's satisfied smile, as if she'd just performed some act of charity. And I made a decision. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Mrs. Pemberton, I said, my tone even and cold. I think you've said quite enough. More than enough, actually. I'm going to have to ask you to leave my home. Victoria's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? You heard me. This is my house, and you've insulted my future daughter-in-law. You're no longer welcome here. Well. She straightened her shoulders, clutching her designer purse. I was simply trying to help. If you can't handle honest feedback, what you offered wasn't feedback. I cut her off. It was cruelty, dressed up as concern. And I won't have it in my home or around my family. Victoria's face flushed. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Mr. Morrison. My husband sits on the board of... I don't care if your husband sits on the throne of England, I said. Get out. She left in a fury of indignation, the door slamming behind her. The party recovered. Eventually, people rallied around Jennifer, reassuring her, but I could see the damage was done. That careful blankness hadn't left her face. She smiled and thanked people and played the gracious host. But something had dimmed. After everyone left, Marcus and Jennifer stayed to help clean up. Jennifer excused herself to the washroom, and Marcus turned to me. Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Victoria would. Not your fault, I said. But we need to talk about something. I'd been thinking about it all evening, watching Victoria's performance, the specific cruelty of it, the calculated nature of her comments. This wasn't just snobbery. This was something else. Victoria doesn't just dislike Jennifer, I said. She actively wants to undermine this relationship. And people like that, people who go out of their way to humiliate others, they usually have something to hide. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to make a phone call. I have a friend, Robert Kowalski, who I've known since university. We played hockey together, stood up at each other's weddings. After retiring from the RCMP, he'd started a private investigation firm, mostly corporate work, background checks, due diligence. I called him the next morning. Rob, I need a favor. Nothing illegal, just information. Personal or professional? He asked. Both. Woman named Victoria Pemberton. Her husband is Lawrence Pemberton. Sits on various boards around Toronto. I need to know what I'm dealing with. Rob was quiet for a moment. What's this about, James? I told him about the engagement party, about the calculated humiliation of my future daughter-in-law. People who act like that, who go out of their way to hurt others. There's usually a reason, I said. Either they're compensating for their own insecurities, or they're protecting something. I want to know which. Give me a week, Rob said. It took him 5 days. He called me on a Friday afternoon. James, you need to come to my office. This isn't a phone conversation. I drove to his firm in North York, my stomach tight with anticipation. Rob's office was modest, professional. He gestured to a chair and slid a folder across the desk. Victoria Pemberton, he began. Born Victoria Elizabeth Thornton in Halifax. Came from money, old maritime family. Married Lawrence Pemberton 32 years ago. He's a commercial real estate developer, very successful. That's all public knowledge, I said. Yes, but here's what isn't. Rob opened the folder. Victoria sits on the board of the Rosedale Community Foundation. It's a charitable organization, raises money for various causes, arts programs, youth initiatives, that kind of thing. Okay. For the past 4 years, Victoria has been the treasurer. She controls the financial accounts. Rob pulled out a series of documents. And for the past 4 years, money has been going missing. I leaned forward. Missing how? Small amounts at first. 5,000 here, 8,000 there. Easy to miss in an organization that handles millions. But over time, it adds up. My estimate, based on what I could access through public filings and some, let's call them creative inquiries, is around $450,000. I stared at him. She's embezzling from a charity? Gets better, Rob said grimly. Or worse, depending on your perspective. The Rosedale Foundation receives federal grants, money from the government for specific programs. If she's been misappropriating those funds, that's not just theft. That's fraud. Federal crime. He pulled out more documents, bank statements, carefully highlighted. She's been funneling money through a numbered company, then into a personal account, using it to fund a lifestyle that even her husband's considerable income can't support. I looked at the evidence spread across the desk. Dates, amounts, transfers, all meticulously documented. The designer clothes, the jewelry, the renovations to their Muskoka cottage, Rob continued, all funded by money meant for underprivileged kids' art programs and community centers. I felt sick, and then I felt angry. Does anyone else know? I asked. Not yet. The foundation's accounting is sloppy, and Victoria's been careful. But if someone with authority started looking closely, Rob shrugged. It would all fall apart pretty quickly. I sat back in my chair, processing. Who has authority to look? CRA for tax issues, RCMP for fraud, or the foundation board if someone raised concerns. Rob fixed me with a serious look. What are you planning to do with this, James? Good question. What was I planning to do? I thought about Jennifer's face at the party, that careful blankness. I thought about Victoria's satisfied smile as she tore down a young woman guilty of nothing except not being born into wealth. I thought about what Sarah would say. She'd always believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. I'm going to give her a chance to make it right, I said. Rob raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? One chance, I said. To apologize to Jennifer, to make restitution to the foundation, to turn herself in. If she takes it, fine. If she doesn't, then you go to the authorities, Rob finished. Then I go to the authorities. I called Victoria Pemberton that evening. She answered on the third ring, her voice breezy and unconcerned. Mr. Morrison, how unexpected. Has Marcus come to his senses about that unfortunate match? I kept my voice level. I need to meet with you. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, at Starbucks on Young Street. I hardly think. 10 o'clock, I repeated. Trust me, you want to have this conversation in private before it becomes public. There was a pause. I could practically hear her recalculating. What is this about? The Rosedale Community Foundation. Specifically, your role as treasurer. Silence on the other end. Long enough that I knew she understood exactly what I was talking about. I'll be there, she said quietly, and hung up. I arrived 15 minutes early, chose a table in the back corner. Victoria arrived exactly on time, her usual armor of designer labels noticeably understated. She sat across from me, her face carefully composed but pale. What do you want? She asked. No preamble. I slid a copy of Rob's report across the table. I want you to understand what I know. She didn't open it immediately, just stared at the folder like it might bite her. You've been stealing from a charity for 4 years, I said quietly. Money meant for children's programs. Federal grant money. That's fraud, Victoria. That's prison time. Her hands trembled slightly as she finally opened the folder. I watched her face as she scanned the documents, seeing her own financial crimes laid out in black and white. This is... She started, then stopped. How did you... Doesn't matter how. What matters is what happens next. She looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd met her, Victoria Pemberton looked genuinely afraid. You're going to blackmail me, she said. No, I replied. I'm going to give you a choice. You have 48 hours to do 3 things. 1. You make a full and sincere apology to Jennifer Chen. 2. You return every penny you've stolen to the Rosedale Foundation. 3. You resign from the board and confess what you've done. That's insane, she said. I can't just... Or, I continued, I take this to the RCMP and the CRA. They investigate, you get charged, and it all comes out publicly. Your husband's business reputation tanks. Your son's career at the law firm becomes complicated. Your friends at the country club? They'll scatter like leaves. Victoria's face had gone from pale to gray. You can't do this. I already have. I stood up. 48 hours. I suggest you use them wisely. I walked out, leaving her sitting there with the evidence of her crimes. I didn't hear from her for a day and a half. I was beginning to think she'd chosen to ignore the ultimatum, maybe flee the country or lawyer up. Then, on Sunday evening, my doorbell rang. Victoria Pemberton stood on my porch, and she looked like she'd aged 5 years and 36 hours. No makeup, hair pulled back simply, wearing jeans and a sweater. I'd never seen her in anything less than full armor before. May I come in? She asked, her voice hoarse. I stepped aside. She sat in my living room, hands clasped in her lap. I've spent the last 2 days thinking about what you said, about what I've done. She looked up at me. I want to apologize to Jennifer. Properly. Can you arrange that? I called Marcus, explained briefly. 20 minutes later, he and Jennifer arrived, both looking confused and wary. Victoria stood when they entered. She looked at Jennifer directly. I owe you an apology that I cannot adequately express, she began. What I said at your engagement party was cruel, elitist, and completely unforgivable. It came from a place of deep insecurity and, if I'm honest, jealousy. Jennifer blinked, clearly not expecting this. You're everything I pretended to be, Victoria continued, her voice breaking. Genuinely kind, actually accomplished in meaningful work, loved for who you are rather than what you have. I tore you down because seeing your authenticity made me confront my own emptiness. Tears were streaming down her face now. I've spent 30 years playing a role, building a persona, and maintaining a lifestyle I couldn't afford through the worst means possible. I've stolen from children, from programs meant to help kids like the ones you work with every day. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, handing it to Jennifer. This is a letter of apology and a check for $50,000 to your clinic. I know it doesn't make up for what I said or what I've done, but it's a start. Jennifer looked at Marcus, then at me, bewildered. I'm turning myself in tomorrow, Victoria said, to the RCMP and to the Foundation Board. I'm going to face the consequences of my actions. But before I did, I needed you to know that you did nothing wrong. You're perfect exactly as you are. The problem was always me. She turned to leave, but Jennifer spoke up. Mrs. Pemberton, wait. Victoria turned back, hope and fear warring on her face. Thank you for the apology, Jennifer said quietly. I accept it, and I hope you find peace with whatever comes next. Victoria nodded, unable to speak, and left. The next morning, Victoria Pemberton walked into RCMP headquarters with her lawyer and confessed to embezzling from the Rosedale Community Foundation. She provided full documentation, cooperation, and a timeline of her crimes. The investigation moved swiftly. She was charged with fraud and breach of trust. As part of a plea agreement, she received a sentence of 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay full restitution plus interest to the foundation. Her husband Lawrence stood by her, somehow. Their son Ethan quietly left Marcus's law firm and moved to Vancouver. The scandal rocked Toronto's social circles for months. The same people who'd kissed Victoria's cheeks at galas now whispered about her downfall over champagne at those same events. Marcus and Jennifer's wedding took place 6 months later. Small, intimate, exactly what they wanted. Jennifer's patience made them a quilt, each square representing a child she'd helped. It hangs in their living room now, more valuable than anything Victoria Pemberton ever owned. I walked Jennifer down the aisle, And when I placed her hand in Marcus's, I thought about Sarah, about how proud she'd be of our son, about how sometimes protecting the people we love means doing hard things. Rob Kowalski attended the wedding, raised a glass at the reception. "You gave her a chance to do the right thing," he said to me quietly. "That's more than most would have done." "I gave her a choice," I corrected. "She made the decision." A year later, I received a letter. Prison stationery, Victoria's handwriting. "Mr. Morrison, I'm 6 months into my sentence. I attend therapy 3 times a week, and I'm teaching basic literacy to other inmates. It's the first genuinely meaningful thing I've done in decades. I wanted you to know that what you did, confronting me with my crimes and giving me the chance to surrender with some dignity, saved my life. Not literally, but in every way that matters. I was drowning in a persona I'd created, stealing to maintain an illusion, and destroying anyone who threatened to expose my emptiness. You forced me to confront who I'd become. It was terrifying and necessary." Jennifer came to visit me last month. I don't deserve her kindness, but she brought photos of her and Marcus's new home, talked about her work. She told me forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about choosing not to let past hurts define your future. I have a long road ahead. When I get out, I'll have to rebuild my life from nothing, but it will be an honest nothing, a real starting point. Thank you for caring enough about your family to stop me, and thank you for caring enough about me as a human being to give me a chance at redemption. Victoria. I showed the letter to Marcus and Jennifer. Jennifer cried a little. "Do you think people can really change?" she asked me. I thought about it. About Victoria's journey from cruel socialite to humbled inmate. About Marcus finding his voice to stand up for Jennifer. About Jennifer's capacity for forgiveness. "I think people can change if they're willing to do the hard work," I said. "And if they have the right motivation." Victoria hit bottom and decided to climb back up. That's real change. Marcus put his arm around his wife. "You visiting her was incredibly generous, Jen." She shrugged. She needed to see that her apology mattered, that her attempt at making amends was seen. Everyone deserves that chance. I thought about what I'd learned through this whole ordeal, about how privilege and insecurity can twist people into caricatures of themselves, about how defending your family sometimes means doing uncomfortable things, about how justice and mercy aren't opposites but partners. Most importantly, I learned that character isn't about what you have or where you come from. It's about what you do when tested. Jennifer, facing public humiliation, chose grace. Victoria, facing exposure, chose honesty. Marcus, caught between worlds, chose love. And me? I chose to protect my family while still offering a path to redemption. I'd do it again. As I sit here now, 2 years after that engagement party, watching Marcus and Jennifer host their own gatherings with ease and warmth, I'm reminded of something Sarah used to say. The true measure of a person isn't how they treat their equals, but how they treat those they perceive as beneath them. Victoria failed that test spectacularly, but she also proved that failure doesn't have to be final, that confronting our worst selves can be the beginning of becoming our best selves. Jennifer's clinic received not just Victoria's donation, but a wave of contributions from people who heard the story and wanted to support her work. Last month, they expanded to serve 3 times as many children. The Rosedale Foundation, after recovering from the scandal, implemented new financial controls and transparency measures. They're actually serving more families now than they ever did under Victoria's tenure. And Lawrence Pemberton, Victoria's husband, sold one of their properties and donated the proceeds to youth programs. He visits Victoria every week in prison and has become an advocate for white-collar crime reform. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just gone straight to the police. Victoria would still have been caught, still punished. But would she have had the chance to take ownership? To apologize meaningfully? To start the work of becoming someone better? I don't know. What I do know is that my goal wasn't revenge. It was protection and, if possible, redemption. Marcus tells his colleagues the story sometimes, usually over drinks after a long day. "My dad taught me that strength isn't about flexing your power," he says. "It's about knowing when to use it and when to offer a hand up instead." I think about that engagement party often, about Victoria standing in front of 40 people, tearing down a young woman who'd done nothing but fall in love with the wrong person by Victoria's twisted standards. I think about how one phone call, one investigation, one confrontation changed multiple lives. And I think about the lesson in all of this. Real power isn't about money or status or who you know. It's about character, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. Victoria Pemberton taught my family about cruelty disguised as concern. But she also taught us about the possibility of redemption, about how even people who've lost their way can find it again if someone cares enough to hold up a mirror and say, "Look at what you've become. You can be better than this." Jennifer framed Victoria's apology letter. It hangs in her office at the clinic, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Everyone's fighting a battle we know nothing about, she tells her young patients and their families. Kindness costs nothing and changes everything. My granddaughter was born last spring. They named her Sarah, after my late wife. When I hold her, I think about the world she'll grow up in, about the values we'll teach her. She'll learn that dignity comes from how you treat others, not from what you own. That true class is about character, not pedigree. That sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. And she'll learn that when someone tries to make you feel small, you have choices. You can shrink to fit their expectations, you can fight back with equal cruelty, or you can stand tall in your truth and let your integrity speak for itself. Jennifer chose the third option, and in doing so, she taught everyone watching, including Victoria Pemberton, what real strength looks like. I'm 63 years old now. I've built bridges and designed water systems and helped shape the infrastructure of this city. But the most important thing I ever built was a family based on love, respect, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Victoria Pemberton tried to tear that down with her words and her prejudice. Instead, she ended up strengthening it. And maybe, just maybe, she started building something genuine of her own in the process. That's the thing about confronting cruelty with justice tempered by mercy. Everyone has the chance to become better. Not everyone takes it, but everyone deserves the opportunity. I gave Victoria that opportunity. She took it, and our whole community is better for it.